Okay, I'm going to go ahead and begin. We have a quorum of our commission. My name is Marie Ray, and tonight is the October 30th Commission on Disabilities meeting. And tonight we will be hosting the Wakefield Memorial High School project team to discuss the new high school, specifically the accessibility and programming. Before we begin, I would like to call the meeting to order. It's 7:02. A reminder that this meeting is being recorded. Lois and Dan, do you have the flag so we can do the pledge? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our mission is to address the needs and concerns of our disabled residents and provide their full participation in the activities and services of Wakefield. The way I'd like to host this evening is I'd like to turn this over to the project team so that you can give your presentation, and then we'll allow for questions and answers from the commission and the public after the presentation. I would ask that people, before you speak, please state your name and indicate where you are from. So I think I need to screen share, and who will that be for? Brian?
Okay. So I have two accounts running here, just so I can manage this well. If you could give sharing privilege to the Brian Black SMMA account, that's the one that I'll share the screen from.
Okay. How do I do that, Brian? All right, hold on here. Screen share.
I seem to be able to do that now.
Okay, you're in?
Let's
Okay.
see, you should. Okay, there it is.
Yes,
the title,
we can see it.
Title slide. And should I just jump in here with the presentation?
Yes, I'd like to just say for everybody else, would you please put yourselves on mute just so that we don't have any static during the presentation. So Brian, if you would just introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure. Hi, I'm Brian Black, architect with SMMA. I'm the project designer. Great pleasure to be with you here tonight. Two other presenters tonight, Doug Lyons, the superintendent of schools, will follow, and Erin Prestilio, who is leading our site design team, will also join. So I don't know, Doug, do you want to say any words?
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for coming.
And if Erin, you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Brian. Not happy to be here tonight, this evening, to speak with you about this important project and some ways we are incorporating accessibility.
Okay, and so we have a lot of material. We are well along in this process. In terms of design, we are at 60% through this construction documents phase. Oh, I'm sorry. I neglected to introduce the person from Bond Building who will be presenting. I think that's you, Peter, no?
Yes. I'm not
okay.
Specifically, if I'm not presenting anything, I'm just here to that you make.
Okay. So representing the construction phase portion of the discussion tonight. So, okay. We'll start again. So the agenda here has us, after the introductions, doing a quick project overview. We'll talk about accessibility across the site and the idea of a very interconnected campus. We'll transition into the building, looking at entrances and exits, and then talk about the interior environment, as well as educational programs which are being planned for the new facility. And again, quick touch on some of the mitigation ideas for construction. And from here, I'm going to pass it over to Doug. But first, just to give you a snapshot where we are, we're well along in design. We have a few months left before we kind of finalize drawings and get these to bond to go into a construction phase in the spring. And we'll be really off and running, getting the building going, getting into the ground. So without further ado, over to you, Doug.
Thank you so much, Brian. Good evening, everybody. So the next few slides we're going to share just kind of to kind of give you an update on what has brought us to this point. There are numerous parts of the existing building that are not accessible to students, right? And so a picture is worth 1,000 words. As you can see, the wheelchair does not fit into the elevator that we have 2 elevators of the same size. So we have students right now at the middle school that are in wheelchairs that could not access the existing elevators that are in place. And so that's really important. You also need to know that all of the work that we're doing is compliant with the ADA and also with the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board and the Americans with Disabilities Act, right? The architectural guidelines there as well. Next slide, please. So when we started this work, we really highlighted the lack of accessible entrances in and out of the buildings. I mentioned our undersized and outdated elevator carriages. We had an undersized, inaccessible, and inflexible lab spaces. This is a picture of a science classroom that was cited numerous times in kind of the shortcomings that we had in the existing spaces. And we were out of compliance with handrails, toilets, door handles, countertops, sinks. The courtyard in the center of the school was not accessible to students that needed support or had to travel via wheelchair. And so there's also multi-level conditions without sufficient ramps. And so the new construction addresses all of this as any new construction would and bring up to date all of the areas that you will see when Brian goes through the upcoming slides. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Doug. So here's a view of it's a rendering of the completed project as it will be in early 2027. So you can see a substantial building, roughly the same square foot area as the existing high school. However, much more targeted in terms of the distribution of areas to where the space is really useful and where it most carefully and efficiently supports the educational vision for the high school well into the future. So we're looking at a 260, roughly, 1,000 square foot building constructed on the Beasley Oval footprint behind the current school. So the current school sits where the new Beasley Oval will be constructed. And the building breaks down roughly into 2 halves with a central celebratory element that is the media center pushing out, and the entry into the school, right into the center and heart of the school at the center of the picture. And from here, I'll pass it to Erin to talk about some of the conceptual approaches and features of this bright new interconnected campus.
Thanks, Brian. Were you going to flip to the next slide or?
Up to you.
Okay. So I
If
will
you want to
start.
elaborate here, that's fine.
So I will start by saying that one of our goals when we started the project, one of the goals for the site for the team was really to clarify and provide dedicated pedestrian space for students and for the community. And so I hope you'll see that's part of the theme. Much of the theme on the site is that we're providing safe, dedicated space for pedestrians for drop off, for arrival and dismissal, for learning environments, for there's a variety of athletic environments that we're providing. So if you flip to the next plan, it is a plan of the project, and you'll see, to orient you, Farm Street's on the top of the diagram, Hemlock Road's on the left. You know, you have all of your fields, tennis courts and baseball on the left side. The new Beasley Oval will be built. Brian was talking a lot about the school that's in white at the bottom. And then to the right, we have Woodville and Burnett Field. Our project does not include kind of area around Woodville, and we're restoring the Burnett Field where we have to do some culvert projects. But we're really focused on providing parking. We can't avoid parking on these school projects. So we're providing an increased parking program for the school. Again, we're clarifying and providing a lot of spaces for pedestrians, all of which will be accessible. And the major improvement for the community is also the realignment in the roundabout at Farm Street and Hemlock Road. That's on the top left corner. It's the roundabout that you see. And then reconstruction of Beasley Oval and all of the field events that are associated with that as well. The site's been designed flexibly to provide dedicated bus drop-off and pickup zone. It has two main areas for parents and caregivers to drop off students and pick up students. The parking has been distributed into a main northern lot. We're providing some additional spaces. Obviously, we're providing accessible spaces, but also visitor spaces. And then we're also expanding, and this diagram doesn't show it, but we're expanding the existing parking lot across the street from Landrigan. And that's going to be used primarily for students. And so we've thought a lot about how those students are going to get to the school, walkways along Hemlock Road and whatnot. So you'll start to see some of these. We have the parking areas you'll see, and then this entry plaza, this main space that we see. It's really, hopefully it's going to feel like a pedestrian zone. It's going to lead from the school's main entrance across, it's across a vehicular drive, but we're using pedestrian pavement materials. There's no curbing at all. We'll have bollards spaced for safety, but it's really meant to be a pedestrian zone that transitions across the drive to Beasley Oval, and we have some learning spaces and some gathering spaces for those who are attending events at the field, or for those instructors who have the opportunity to take a class outside. All the pathways are, again, obviously accessible. It's new construction. That's just a little bit about what we've got planned for the site. I don't know if the next slide shows. Okay, so the next slide here shows some of the circulation routes that we're thinking about. It's the pedestrian circulation. We also are thinking about cyclists that are coming to the site. So we have a bicycle racks planned also. You know, all of those purple arrows on the building are all different ways that where we have doors we need to accommodate. Some of the drop-off zones that I was talking about are highlighted in orange along adjacent to the building and near the field. And then all of the different ways that pedestrians can circulate in and around the site, all of which are accessible. Oh, and the accessible spaces are also highlighted in blue. That's one thing that this plan also shows. So we have some spaces at the main entrance. We have some spaces up at the field, and then we also have spaces at the northern parking lot, which will primarily serve the district office and WCAT. this is an image of the main entrance of the school and a view from Burnett looking towards the main entrance. And you'll see here, I was talking about that pedestrian pavement material and the bollards there. So the curbing there is no curbing, it's all a flush ground plane treatment. So you'll start to see how that might feel once it's built. Really a pedestrian friendly zone, equitable access for students and Brian, you're
Of course I am.
on.
So, right, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of these, topics before we head to the interior, because there's a nice kind of story about how we're approaching things in a similar manner at the interior. We're looking for that clarity that Erin talked about of a circulation system that goes not only around the outside of the school, but all the way to the inside. And the idea that we're breaking down barriers here and literally have a barrier-free environment. You can see in the foreground here that paving and the raised table across the driveway that says this is a pedestrian zone. It's a friendly, welcoming environment it's meant to be for everyone, right? So as we move to the interior, this is the level 1 plan. And the space that you enter into, so the main entry is here. That main space we call the dining commons. It includes the cafeteria with the servery off to the side here, which serves the seating area. There's a large learning stair within the space, which kind of makes it feel like a living room. But at the same time, this space will have the sense of almost an outdoor space. So think of that campus flowing through the interior and right through the center of the school. And what we have is basically 2 buildings that we're passing between. On the left are basically classrooms, but of really every sort of classroom you could imagine. There are science classrooms that are basically around the sort of, call it the back side of the building, and general classrooms wrapping the front. Level 1 has the admin suite right when you walk in. It has student services as a separate zone so that it is welcoming and again, inclusive and highly visible. Guidance and career center are in the middle. And there are these pockets of different environments sort of adjacent to one another. And that's part and parcel with the educational vision to create these environments that put the students at the center and give them a lot of control over their educational destiny, if you will. So part of that is the dark green spaces, which are special education space. And I'll talk about those a little bit separately. On the right-hand side of the plan, we have the athletics and health and wellness in blue toward the front of the school. And then we've got the performing arts and the auditorium, which is that purple space. So that's entered, again, through that central common space, the heart of the school. And as we get further back into the school, we have in the back corner here, we have the district office, the new WCAT space, and a service area that wraps and connects to the loading dock. As we move through, we've indicated in red the main entrance. That's right out front, parallel with Farm Street. The blue is the second tier of entry. These are entry and exit. They are, again, barrier-free. We'll have actuator buttons at the doorways. The ones in the front are for drop-off, ease of drop-off and entering into those programs. And on the back, where it says outdoor learning, those are where groups of students and in some cases, faculty, whoever is going outside can go out to those spaces, engage in an environment that's close to nature, and then come back into the school in a safe and sort of connected way. The yellow arrows point out from egress stairs. We've got 7 egress stairs around the building. and those are all accessible exits. The one at the gym is coming down from the second floor. It does not connect to other floors. So therefore it doesn't have the same connectivity as the other stairs, but you can see in the plan where the bright yellow indicates those are our egress stairs. We've indicated elevators. There are 2 of them. So they are connected to that central common space. One toward the academic wing, which goes up all 3 floors, and one that connects up to the floor that has the gym. We have stacked the gym on level 2 in order to really compact this building into the available footprint. It is not an easy task, but we feel like it will function extremely well and actually will bring people maybe further up into the building. You can see traveling up to the gym by stair takes you through that learning stair, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then straight back is the auditorium entry. This might be my chance to talk about the auditorium. We don't have a deep dive into that, but you can see along one edge where you enter, there is a level floor that connects all the way to the gym. So providing direct accessibility there. And then within the house, right, there are 667 seats in the auditorium. We've got many positions that are for wheelchairs. And we've got an accessible ramp along the right-hand side of the plan that gets you all the way to the floor at the front. Again, the backstage is all connected to the music suite. Everything on this level connecting, without transitions. Up to level 2, you can see where those elevators come up. The media center is that piece that was at the front and has that sort of pleated facade. That's a significant space, shared space, with lots of differentiated seating. Flexible furniture is really a fundamental part of this new mode of teaching and learning. The space in the corner in this pocket, we call the LGI. It's a large group instruction space, which is basically a flat floor classroom that can be used in a seminar format. It can be used as an art gallery. It can be used for many, many different things. So it's a space for everyone. And it basically replaces the tiered science lecture hall in the current school. So, just immediately moving from something that is not inclusive in terms of its seating opportunity to something that is highly flexible and accessible. As Doug mentioned, the entire project throughout will be compliant as a new building at both federal and state levels. The third floor, which I'm showing here, is where the north half of the project on the right sort of drops away. So you're seeing roofscape on the right, and the third floor of the academic wings coming up on the left-hand side. And here you can see more of those science classrooms in pairs. And I'll talk about those briefly in a minute. We have evacuation chairs for rescue at each of the egress stairs. Those are pocketed into the wall. The special education programs for this project are many, and I'm not sure, Doug, if you want to jump in here, but these programs and the spaces that support them, I think will serve the community extremely well for decades into the future. Each space, each level has a little bit unique element to it. This is level 1 that has a new medically fragile classroom, which has medical staff in the space to attend to students who have medical conditions where they need supervision. There's an access point and a drop-off at the front of the school that serves that space through this short hallway. And the nursing suite is in the middle here. So that's also very central and easy access to and from the front door. The language-based classroom is directly adjacent to ELA classrooms that are just nearby. And being primarily an inclusionary model, there are lots of these, see this 1B resource room. This is roughly a half-size classroom, highly flexible for supporting really all core academics and some electives as a really flexible teaching space. And then we can see these small group sort of pull-out spaces here that are adjacent to other general classrooms. Those are two components we'll see on every floor. Again, supporting multiple modes of teaching and learning in the special education realm. So combining different approaches in one school. And you can see very distributed. We're not trying to silo special education in one wing or one area. And we've worked closely with the Department of Education, DESE, in arriving at a plan that everyone is really happy about. On level 2, School to Life is the program that is primary on level 2 in the academic wing. There are 2 classrooms, one for those on the autism spectrum, and the other one for students with intellectual disabilities. And a really great feature of this is a new model apartment, which teaches life skills. That's that 2J space here. It's shared by the 2 sides. And it's, again, a place to gain, transitional skills that can be used in just everyday settings for students who will be leaving the school and living on their own. So learning the basics about how to do laundry and take care of a living space. And the toileting spaces here are highly appropriate for all of those programs. That's something the current school does not have in a very high functional setting. On level 3, the PAL space is one that provides support in a few realms: academic, social emotional learning, and also personal skill development. It is one large classroom. It's over 1,000 square feet with multiple settings inside for counseling, breakout space, one-to-one work settings, and also a quiet focus area in one of the corners. So that is a taste of what's happening in special education. I neglected to talk on level 2 about the therapeutic spaces. OT and PT are included. There's even an adaptive physical education space, which is right directly adjacent to the gym and the health classrooms. So hugely robust program that's going to be such an improvement, and not really enough time in this meeting to go through it all, but I think our reports that are kind of filed for the project give a very complete story of what's happening there. In terms of interior environment, we envision a project that is highly clear, transparent, lots of visibility, but also lots of flexible furniture and differentiated seating environments for all different types of personalities and learning types. And a lot of that furniture can be moved around, including these book stacks, bright, spaces and positive and cheery. These are not even showing some of the graphic work that we're currently doing to instill some of the pride in the school in terms of logos and sayings and inspirational material that will really kind of add some color. One of the stories we wanted to touch on, the science classrooms were one that Doug mentioned. What we intend to build is the diametric opposite of what is currently there, based on MSBA guidelines. So we provide a fixed counter at the perimeter of each of the classrooms, and we're showing a pair of adjacent classrooms that share a prep room. So the behind the scenes work, preparing materials for instruction and storage and whatnot in the prep room is used by both sides, and there are teaching hoods on each side as well. The great part of this is the flexibility. So these are very similar rooms, but the furniture you can see on the left is in rows, and on the right is in peninsulas. So highly flexible and able to be docked to that perimeter countertop to create that traditional, more lab setting. But this is a building that will not have fossil fuel piped to the building. This is an all electric school. So the utilities do not restrict movement. We've got cord reels that come down from the ceiling, allowing free movement and flexibility within the rooms. We'll have ADA compliant sinks. Again, highly flexible furniture, appropriate turning widths and clearances, and good storage, meaning there won't be clutter in the space. Here we can see those two settings of the furniture in basically a grid on the left and in peninsula format on the right. The other story we wanted to highlight was about the learning stair. And so we're connecting two levels of this dining common space. We know we need a somewhat monumental stair element that is welcoming and clear in terms of what it connects to. But it's also a seating area, and it can be something of kind of an internal amphitheater of sorts, almost like a landscape that spills down. And there are two seating areas, one at the top and one at the bottom. And having done a few of these learning stair environments in previous schools, we've been learning more about how to better integrate basically the wheelchair position, both at the top and bottom, that can feel like they are naturally part of the stair. And so that's a function, these designs are a function of wanting to do that. So we're able to, if I go to the next slide here, we can see at the bottom, this is simply a series of fixed benches where one can have a companion seat that feels like it's part of that overall learning stair, and the same at the top. Again, what we're looking for is an environment that's welcoming to everyone, and that presents itself, as having these opportunities pretty much everywhere you go. One element of this that we haven't quite, that isn't quite correct, is this guardrail condition at the top. So what we want to have is actually a position for the wheelchair that can look down to a presenter at the front and not be a visual obstacle. And I think that even glass is something we don't want to try to see through, that we're going to look at doing a knee wall at the top here instead, so that you get a barrier that protects from fall, but that is highly visible from the seated position. So we're still kind of looking at that. But again, the bigger picture here is creating lots of differentiated seating areas that basically everyone can feel included, regardless of, whether you're a sort of introverted people watcher, or if you want to congregate in a large group. And not to mention the 300 or so cafeteria seats off to the right. And so from here, I think I'll give it to Peter. I wasn't sure if you wanted to actually go into a lot of detail here, but maybe share your thoughts about the construction phase, because I think it might be on some people's minds.
Yeah, this is not our project, but this is a project we recently completed. And there were various ways that we concentrated on mitigating the effects of our construction on the community. Our main concern right now, what we're working on right now, is the existing high school and making sure that all entrances and egresses are accessible if to the extent of the code, and to make sure that the building is safe for everybody. And then we're going to proceed after that to the actual construction phase.
And I think we had something queued up with a lot of detail, but I'm not sure we
Yeah,
want to go there right now.
project. So there's a lot of this that doesn't apply to this job, but as an example. So we will have safe crosswalks. We're limiting deliveries based on drop-offs and drop-offs for the school, and we are there will be the fence the vacation period, so that's a challenge, but we always work around. Finals is always a challenge, right? So we don't want to make noise while the kids are trying to take the finals. And we're going to establish temporary space. But infrared security, we probably, right now we don't have that. We don't think that's necessary.
Okay, I think with that, we've completed our overview of the project, and I think we're ready for any questions that might arise.
Are there any members of the commission that have any questions? You can just unmute yourself.
Hi, Marie, this is Janice, and I just wanted to double check on the stage in the auditorium. Did I hear that that is accessible through the music room, or how can a person who uses mobility devices access being on the stage?
So yes, the stage is fully accessible both from the rear of the theater directly to the stage, meaning from the house, like entering from the school side, right? From the main entry through the dining commons. I should just show the plan. Right, so so this path here along this edge is at the same level as the stage. And also at the music suite, the stage is at the same level as this corridor. So this all interconnects. And the house has a raked floor, which goes down 3 feet at the front. And so the access up to the stage is along this ramp and then up this way from the house side.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. What accommodations will there be for people who have hearing loss using that building?
Yeah, so we'll have sound reinforcement devices throughout. So each classroom will have access to basically a speaker system that reinforces the voice of the speaker. In most cases, that's the teacher. In addition to that, the large spaces throughout the school, the gym, the large group instruction space, the cafeteria, even the outdoor playing fields will have listening assistive devices, right? So this is a radio type system that operates with a fixed antenna within the space that transmits to a receiver that connects to a headset. So that's how we achieve assistive listening in those spaces where often, you know, there's a lot of ambient noise, and that can be a helpful device.
This is Janice again, and that's a great question, Lorna. To follow up, has the Mass Commission for Deaf and Hard of Hearing been consulted in any way on what is the most up-to-date equipment that should be in a school?
That's a great question. We have not in the sort of meeting flow of this project done that, but I can check with our audiovisual engineer what contact he might have had most recently, and just to make sure that all of our specifications are up to date.
That would be great.
I'm sure that we are up to date, but I just want to
Mhm.
satisfy you and let him tell you that.
That would be great. The person at Mass Commission for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Jonathan Odell, O''Dell, is phenomenally knowledgeable on this topic.
Oh, great. Okay,
Yes.
we will reach out on that topic.
And Brian, would you then report back to Bill Renault and he will get that information to us?
I sure will.
Thank you.
Could I ask the question?
Sure.
Have you ever considered using a T-coil antenna system for the auditorium and the commons area? That would be addressable to people that have hearing aids now.
This is a great question also. The person who could probably answer that is not with us tonight. I apologize, but I can, again, take your question back and get you an answer, shortly. T-coil system. This sounds familiar to me in terms of what we typically do. I just don't want to tell you for sure because I don't have the drawing in front of me. But let me check on that.
Yeah, we have one in the BB library in the conference room right now. I've had it for a number of years, but I was wondering if this auditorium might be used like we use the Galvin now as for town meeting. And
Yes.
you'd have a group of people in there, which would extend out into the commons area if we did have an overflow.
That is the plan. That is the plan. And so we had our proprietary meeting on, and that was brought up as something to add, Dan. So I've asked them to include it.
There's
Now-
our answer.
Put it in before construction.
Yep.
Other questions?
Bill, I just wanted to double check for the notes. You saying that you asked them to add the T-coil system? Is that what you were saying? I'm sorry.
I did. So we have what they call a proprietary, procurement component to these types of buildings. So if there's a specific type of electronic device like a card access, this can be one. And we asked them to include the T-coil system as part of that. So
Thank you.
sure.
This one might be a little off base a little bit, but in the gymnasium, is there going to be an indoor track for not necessarily meets, but so that the indoor track teams have someplace to practice?
So unfortunately, the project being part of a partnership with the MSBA and receiving a grant, there is basically a red line that MSBA draws around the size of a gymnasium that really prevents us from turning this into a field house. And there were many discussions about this at the very beginning of the project, about trying to fit some kind of a track within that footprint. And we really couldn't make it work. MSBA is insistent that all spaces be, have a high rate of return in terms of the investment, in terms of the educational use. And an indoor track to them is not viewed as valuable a space as some of the other that they are funding. So they actually refuse to participate in a gym that's larger than 18,000 square feet. So our gym is 18,000 square feet. I'm sure that there are some functions of the track program that can be done within the gym, but there is not a track. We looked at that very carefully, and it was found to be by the project team not a viable way to design the athletic space.
Do you know what the square footage for the present field house or gym is now that they have?
It's roughly 17,000 square feet.
So it's a slight
So-
bit.
It is. It's almost, we call it replication. We're basically, copying the size, but we actually think it's what we're going to have is much more efficient in terms of the layout. And we've also the rectangle at the end of the building on the right. We're also replicating the gymnastics gym. We're not calling it that. We're calling it an auxiliary gym because the district would like this to be an all-purpose space. It will still house the gymnastics program, but some other activities will happen in there as well. So that's another nice asset for the project.
Dan, the gym as it's presented will be larger than the current field house.
Any others?
Marie, did you had some questions too, didn't you?
I do, and these may be for Doug. There was a lot of discussion about the special education spaces.
Yeah.
But currently, you have a handful of classrooms at the high school that does co-teaching. Are you intending to continue that inclusion model with the regular ed and special ed teacher in the same classroom?
So inclusion is not predicated on co-teaching. And so we're going to continue to support students where we can. And so we're looking at that very closely now. And so I don't know if it's going to be replicated exactly like it exists now, Marie.
Okay, so I guess my position to you is going to be, from a parent of a child with an intellectual disability, it was very important to be in a classroom with typically developing peers.
So
And while in my position, I understood that the level of academics for my son might not have been the same as if he were in one of the other settings. That was a compromise that I was willing to make for him to be with his regular, typically developing peers.
So that would not preclude him from being in a classroom or be supported and included in a regular education classroom, so that he would still receive support. So if he were to attend the new school.
With a paraprofessional or something like that.
Correct.
And in regard to the post program, is that going to remain outside of this new building?
It will be outside of the new building.
Okay.
Marie, did you say post or host? I didn't hear.
The
Host.
post program, so 18 to 22-year-old.
Janice, we call it Post Academy. It's a small building that is in the back of the Greenwood Fire Station. It's a small section that we've built out
Okay.
that we use to educate 18 to 22-year-old students.
Thank you.
Oh, certainly.
Well, I find this building very impressive, very disappointed that I don't have any other children that will be attending.
It's such a relief to know that students of all abilities are going to be able to freely move throughout the school, which has not been the case for decades.
Right.
So bravo for our beautiful new middle school and this new school, and then the new Voc that's coming, that are all addressing accessibility issues with great care. Thank you. And thanks, Bill, for all your work to make sure everybody's keeping in line there.
Thank you for the kind words.
And to the building committee, I have to say,
Yeah, Joe's on the call.
thank you, Joe,
Joe Bertrand.
and your colleagues. I know you work very hard.
Thank you.
Work. Are there any other questions from the commission for this team? Well, if not, I want to thank you all very much for taking the time to present this to us. We very much appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, please get back to Bill Renaud with some of the questions that we had. And with that, we want to say thank you. I'm going to ask the commission members to stay on the call so we can continue with our regular business meeting. Bill, do you have anything?
Could I say one quick thing?
Sure, Dan.
I went to just about every single school that was in Wakefield. I was there for the Apple Fire and beyond as a junior high school, the old high school. And, even though we walked 20 miles to school back and forth uphill, this is a beautiful school. And I give credit to the building committee for working so hard on this and hope everything develops well. I wish I could.
Hear, hear.
I'll see and list you in the school, all right?
Well, we will get to use it, Dan. Not for, we will get to use it, I'm sure. I'm looking
That's true.
forward to it.
Thank you for the guidance and oversight.
Yeah, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.
I did have I went to Melrose High School, and it was a 4-story building, including the basement. So you did have to go up 9 flights of stairs to get from the cafeteria up to the top floor. And there was no,
But in the springtime, it was 3 stories.
in the springtime, and there was a flood in the basement because it was built under the water table. So it was a very lovely environment.
That's definitely something not happening here, so.
No, it's
Above the
beautiful.
Water table on this one.
It's beautiful.
It's going to be extraordinary to have 3 beautiful schools in the Wakefield area that are, and then others, but especially these main schools. It's pretty awesome. Does make you want to go out and adopt somebody's kids so that they can go to school there.
Right. I might be becoming a resident by the time my son gets into high school, so.
There you go.
Who knows?
I have great nieces and nephews that will hopefully be attending the school, so I'm rooting for them.
There you go. So Marie, do you want me to chat about MBTA communities and give you a quick?
Yes, please. Well, we have you.
Yeah, so Erin has been taking the lead on the town side for this initiative, and what ended up happening is towards the end of Governor Baker's term, he enacted a new legislation requiring multifamily housing to be created throughout the Commonwealth. One of the issues that was going on at the state level was that most of the housing really had been focusing just in and around around Boston. So there's always been a push to get folks into the suburbs. So, I'm sure you folks have heard about 40B. This is kind of another initiative, not really under the same guidelines. So it's not affordable. It actually can't be restricted. So it's multifamily housing. We have, based on the type of MBTA access that you have a different ratio of houses or units that you need to create. Wakefield needs to create 1,700 units in order to still be eligible for a series of grants that we get. So over probably the last 3 years or so, we brought in close to $4 million between some of Erin's initiatives, my initiatives, And in order to be and remain eligible for these dollars, we have to develop a new zoning modification that allows for this type of higher density within the town. So we were going to bring it to you folks to chat about it, but you know, honestly, I think you only probably needed a higher level because there's no real restrictions that we can put on it. The big thing I see, and I know Dan will be and Lois will be chiming in on that, is the parking, and you know, there'll obviously need to be an accessible component to that too. But aside from that, we can't really restrict anything. So I you know, I don't know if there's something specific that the commission would want to talk about. If we want to have Erin come, we can definitely have her do that. She has probably about a half hour, maybe a little bit more PowerPoint that she's done. She's given it to me today, but I mean, as I'm going through it, I don't know. Most of this is more a zoning exercise and talking about, you know, creating zoning requirements. So, you know, that's not something really the commission deals with per se. So, you know, I figured I'd give you a quick briefing, and if there's something specific, I can bring it back. Or if you wanted them to come, they can definitely come.
This is a state mandate, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Oh yeah, state mandate. So,
But the state isn't giving us any money to do this.
oh, of course not. They don't do that. Why
Because
would
there's,
they do that?
because there's no restriction on making this happen. I mean, I guess I'm a little confused as to
There's time
what
frame.
is it they're looking for? They're looking at for single homeowners to make their houses multiple dwellings, or
Well,
are they looking
that's-
for new construction, or what is it that they're looking for?
You have to demonstrate that you can create another 1,700 units within a certain radius of the train station. And so the way that Erin and the planning board have looked at it is to look at adding another floor, making 3 families by right, that type of thing. So that's how they've been approaching it. We're also, you know, as she's gone through and done the presentations to various boards, you know, the big thing that she's been hearing is to minimize the size of this. So this was going to have, I think, a pretty sizable impact to neighborhoods. It will be coming to the traffic advisory committee soon for us to give our opinion. I mean, you know, the big thing I see is, you know, where are these folks going to park cars? Because it's not, if you're generating 1,700 more units, that doesn't necessarily just mean that it's a 1-bedroom per se, you know. So obviously that's a lot more vehicles. The idea is that you're an MBTA community, so folks are going to be using the T when it runs. So that's kind of the way they're looking at it. But
when it runs.
yeah, right. So you know, it's a difficult mandate for most communities. All of the communities are really grappling with this and how to do it. The idea of just the 3 family, I think they've also looked at, you know, kind of looking at certain areas that already have the higher density, because you can claim those areas. You don't have to generate it. You have to demonstrate that it can be built. That's what you have to do. So it's not like there's a mandate to build it. So it's essentially a zoning exercise, if you want to look at it that way. And
Do
so
we have an area, Bill, in town that already meets the requirement?
some of it. So it's not big. There's certain size requirements too. So it has to be, I believe it's about 50 acres. So that's a sizable chunk of land, right? So, you know, we have areas around Albion Street, North Ave that already have that density, that overlay district that was done a few years ago to allow the higher density and mixed use stuff within the area of the train station. So it was something that was done. I mean, that's predates me, so maybe about 6 or 7 years ago now, I think. So that's the one that built the Tono building. That's the one that had the larger density with Harvard Mills, and then there's some other buildings down on Foundry, that all of that. So those all can count towards it. So, you know, my take is to claim whatever we can if we've already built it. That seems like a no-brainer to me. And then, you know, identify, you know, and try to condense how much of the single family or 2-family areas that we would spill into. But that's all in the works still. So it's still, we have a year, I believe, or so, but the goal was for Springtown meeting to have a proposal going. I'm not sure if that's 100% realistic. They may need to go to the fall meeting, but ultimately we have to come up with a plan. Otherwise, we're not eligible for a bunch of grants that we already get. And like I said, we're probably averaging over $1 million a year from these grant programs. So it's pretty important for what I do. And You know, this would take care of a bunch of different grants that we could even use for accessibility. There's one that really allows for like elevators to be constructed and to do more accessibility into buildings, town-owned buildings that I've been eyeing for a project, and you know, that wouldn't be eligible. So there's a reason to do it. I mean, it definitely does make sense, and the goal is to try to do it in a way that doesn't change your character of your town, I would say. So
So I know you're
So-
saying that it can't be restricted. I'm sorry, whoever I just spoke over, I can't
That's
see
okay,
well.
go ahead, go ahead.
So, but why can't we be creative in thinking outside the box? For instance, you know, I'm thinking specifically about our seniors and about, you know, the population that are like my son. What prevents some of this new building to be more like dorm living? Okay, so a central living area with 3 or 4 bedrooms, maybe a shared bath, maybe an individual bath in each room.
yep,
That
no,
would,
I hear where you're coming from. We can't restrict it in any way. So age restriction's not an option.
right, but you're just building a unit that has this makeup.
Mhm.
Now, you know, whatever 3 or 4 people are gonna live in that space are gonna, you know, live in that space.
Mhm.
If, you know, if you build it, they will come, right? Because that population is looking for living space and housing. So, you know, it may not appeal to some people, but it may appeal more to other people. So why
Yeah.
can't I mean, that would certainly help restrict the parking issue.
Yeah, understood. But again, we have to create 1,700 units. So we have to be somewhat general in our bylaw creation. You can't really go and get it into say, all right, you have to build a, you know, dorm style in this area. You can't really do that with zoning. We just don't have an ability. I mean, I think it's a good point, and I've been advocating for it. So we got a couple of town-owned properties that we're going to be looking to develop for either senior or affordable, or, you know, I've been advocating for some, you know, more accessible living arrangements. So, and I think we've talked about this before. So Butler Ave is one that we've been talking about, but then also the Herd School. So if the town's looking at those and potentially disposing of those, I would think the Herd would be a really good opportunity for that type of style. And it's something that the town controls, so we can dictate there. That's a spot where you could.
But that wouldn't count as part of this, just because of
No.
the location.
No, that wouldn't count as part of this. So yeah, both of those are, you know, town owned, and we decide how they're developed and how they're built as a town. So I would say that's one of the ones where the commission would want to definitely chime in. I've already been advocating in multiple meetings that I've been in on them. I'll be involved, I'm sure, I'm definitely involved in the disposal component of it, and probably in the development as well. You know, there was some discussions of bringing in developers and talking about that, but there are plenty of opportunities with the developers that do this type of development that would build those types of units. So I think it's definitely an opportunity. Doesn't mean that we can't advocate it for in other locations too. But I wouldn't say, I don't think we can make a wholesale zoning change that would allow it or require it. That would be difficult to do.
Not requiring it, but advocating.
Advocating, I think, is the key.
Yeah,
is
and
the- yeah,
I think,
that would be the better strategy, because I think you'll get it. That's
Yeah.
I think the thing, you know.
and if we could be at the table as early as possible with the Herd School, because we often hear, well, you know, you should have asked for that a long time ago. So could we be at the ground floor with the discussion about the Herd School to see? I think that would be an awesome opportunity to,
Yes, as soon as I hear this is getting legs, I'll definitely tag in. So I think the first step would be to go to town meeting to ask them to dispose of it and allow us to dispose of it. So that's the first step. I would say town meeting would be a great place to advocate there for sure. So you'll know about that. I'll be updating you folks on that. And in both projects, as we're talking about strategies internally with town staff, I've already been advocating for it. So I can tell you that we're already in on the ground floor, and we're going to
Thank
continue
you.
to make that happen. So
that's awesome. Bill, when you said that we need to have 1,700 units,
yeah.
and that's not taking into account all what you talked about, that's all around the Foundry and North Ave area.
It
That
has
those
to
are,
be-
those would be part of that 1,700 count, or 1,700 more?
No, it would be 1,700 for the whole area. You have to be able to create the
Okay.
multi-family zoning by right. So that's the key, is it's by right. So there's no special permits that would allow those types of things to come in.
So
This
they've
is-
done
this is
10%.
you apply for a building permit and you're building your project. And you have parameters on the, I would say like the area of lot coverage, open space, parking. That's kind of how you do these things. So, as putting on my former developer hat from probably 25 years ago, but I was doing it for a long time. And so that's kind of how you structure your zoning, is you lay out parameters on footprints and that type of thing. That's what this is about. It's not really about the buildings inside and how those are built, because there are requirements for retrofit stuff and all of those in the building code currently. So those are all covered to some degree.
So the Quantipower project that will have a shuttle, is that going to count? Those 400 and whatever units are going in there?
Too far away.
How close
Half a
does it have to
mile?
be?
Half a
Half
mile.
a mile,
Yeah.
even with the
Sometimes
shuttle,
half a mile.
even with the shuttle, that's a bummer.
Yeah, total bummer. Yeah. So you have to, it's the idea is that you're walking to it, so it's kind of transit oriented. That's how they're doing it. So depending on the type of T access that you have different layers and different requirements on it. So like I'm up in Middleton, we don't really have one, so we're considered an adjacent community. So we have a much lower threshold that we have to add. I mean, ours is in like the 200s, somewhere around there, maybe. I think we're a little bit higher than that based on our population. But anyway,
It is all regarding the Wakefield train stop, or Wakefield and Greenwood, or
and bus though, and we have bus, so that
right, we have the bus, and the
that's
bus goes
higher
all the way
than
down
that.
North Ave. So I don't understand why the Quantipower group is, anyway, I don't need to
You
answer
would
the
think,
question.
yeah,
I'm just,
but they talk about the train station specifically. That's how they do it. It has
okay.
to be X amount of mile, the half a mile from the train station. There's requirements on the overall acreage, of a minimum zone size, and you can have multiple zones that are still within that same parameter. So it's an interesting one, to say the least. So it's a tough mandate for most communities.
So this would allow, if somebody owned a single family home and wanted to, and it was in that district and wanted to add like an accessory unit in the back of their house, or in
Or
something
build
like
up and
that.
yeah, or build up and add another one, or
Yep.
rip out the guts in the middle and turn it all into a 3-family. You could do that. All those things would be allowed. Yeah. I mean, right now we get some of them that come through anyway. So there's a good one. A good example would, probably one of the more recent ones, was on it is Chestnut Street. So the corner of Chestnut and Cedar, I believe. There's a white house that was built there. That's an example of one that was done recently.
They did a very nice job there too. It
That's
looks
why I bring
very
it up.
nice.
That's a good looking one. And
Yeah.
we have a few other ones around town too, that have 4 units, 3 units. So you can get the higher densities, but you got to be careful, because the devils are in the details. If you build it a certain way, then you can end up with folks ripping down 2 or 3 to create a higher density use. You can get that stuff happening too.
So Bill, the old 10% affordable housing is out the window now?
No, that's still a requirement too. Oh yeah, that's still there.
Because
And-
that's a moving target. It keeps on moving.
Yep.
Right.
So so I mean, actually, it's a great point, Dan, because like if you have this, as these things are built, we have to manage that 10%. So we're always looking. We have what we call inclusionary zoning. So you have to add in, I think it's 18% is the total to every development over a certain size. So that's what keeps us, within. So as they're getting that higher number for each development, we stay above the curve. With the 18%.
Condo and apartments?
Well, they work differently depending on, they could be either condo or apartments. It has to be units. It's a unit requirement for MBTA communities. For 40B, the affordable units count towards it. So they're required to put 20% of them as affordable. And then if it's owner occupied, and that would count towards our 10%. Or if it's rental and they do 20% affordable, all the rental units count towards our affordability.
So Tarrant Lane, is that online yet?
No, it's not. It's being built, but that counts towards our numbers because they pulled the building permits and all of that. Yeah. So ones that are, when folks are doing the inclusionary zoning, they have to have an occupancy permit before it counts towards our number. So the Cabot and Fords project, that's down the line. That's the one that's a little bit more, you know, that you know, we are kind of stuck in a holding pattern on that. Even though we've created the units, we're not getting credit for the units. So that's why we have 3 other 40Bs popping up around town. So
that we know.
I know. Well, I'm reviewing them all. So it's a lot of units. So I mean, like I said, if you folks would like Erin to come, she definitely can. But that's the Reader's Digest version. I didn't see anything that we really could do to make some tweaks to this. So I had told her that I would come here first to talk to you folks and see if you think it makes sense to have her come in or not. I know they're going to, you know, all the development boards, obviously, and she'll be coming to Traffic Advisory Committee, Dan and Lois, for us to chat about that too. Obviously, parking.
And they are making pitches to the public because I've attended a couple of them already. So
Yeah.
I just looked at the new assessment for the MBTA is like 657,000 the town of Wakefield pays.
Oh, is that what it is? I'm not even sure. That's
for one bus route right now and no train service, and one bus route that's gone down the drain.
Seems fair, right? What's the problem?
And
I'm not
handicap parking.
Yeah, and then they give us the same amount back to repair all of our roads in town. So that's that just to give you an idea of how the state's working. So it makes total sense.
Yeah, right.
I heard that the measurement there for the what is it, the commuter rail or the in Somerville there, it was
Green
off
line,
all
green
about.
line. Yeah.
Yes, you
Oh, the
could fit.
tracks, yeah. Yeah.
They said it was so small.
Yeah, yeah. So my wife had, full disclosure, my wife does work for the T, and she was part of the Green Line enhancement, not the expansion. So she was working with the ones that were in like ComAv and then they're doing, she's like more on the financial and project management side and all that stuff. So, but she's still there now. So,
You know, if you owned a
Part-time
house, had a mortgage you couldn't pay for, what would you say? I'm going to put an addition on the house, but that's the way the PA thinks. They can't take care of what they got, and they're saying let's expand out further. Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. I think the intent there is just the density of the amount of folks and you know, trying to get more folks in using the train from Somerville. I think that's kind of the thought process. But I mean, that was a long time coming. I think it was related to, if I remember, it was a CLF. It was the CLF, the Conservation Law Foundation, sued the state. I want to say it was because of the Central Artery Tunnel project, and that got a certain amount of money that had to go towards T into expanding the T. That's where it all, I think it was supposed to be the majority of the chunk, and then obviously prices went through the roof. But yeah.
So they want us to do all this building to accommodate more people. Some of these people may have disabilities who cannot access the T in Wakefield.
I hear you. Yep. And it's not from lack of trying. So we have emails in. We can push again on that for sure.
So there should be some accountability. If they're demanding this to be done, then they need to step up to the plate and help out those people that want to access the train but can't at this particular point.
I hear you, but it's not MBTA that's requiring this. They're using that as a metric to help figure out how many units you need to do. So that's a state housing thing that lumped it. They call it MBTA communities because you're next to an MBTA area. So it's sort of kind of like the eastern section of the state, middle to eastern section of the state. Everybody out in the west, they get a free pass. Some of the folks that are in the kind of, you know, 2 or 3 towns over from a T station, you're out. So it's an interesting way they approached it. I don't think they gave it enough thought, and they just kind of threw it at the wall to see what would stick, and we all have to scramble. So
I think if we held back that check for 657,000, maybe they'd take notice of us.
I think that's a drop.
Melrose, I would imagine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So is it Melrose and Reading? I'll have to do this too. What as far as Andover and
Andover's in.
Lawrence and Haverhill.
Yeah, I'm in.
Of course, they may already have some more dwellings Closer
Middleton's
dwellings.
interesting. We're actually adjacent to adjacent communities. We're actually in a little pocket where we don't actually touch anybody, but we're still in. So, it's interesting how they've done it.
I think we could give a project to the Northeast Folk School to build a platform. They could build it for probably a couple $1,000s.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Or
Yeah.
they should increase the number of accessible parking spaces where the commuter rail is actually accessible, like Melrose Highlands. Just whatever the minimum number of spaces is, include the Wakefield spaces in there and just make way more accessible spaces where there
That's a good
is.
idea. That's a good, but I mean, that they're under a, some type of consent order, right? To improve all the stations. So they're going in theory, systematically going through it. My guess is that they're focusing on the higher use areas, right? So the stuff for the Green Line and Red Line and all those guys. And then, they spill out into the suburbs here and there. So that's kind of how it's been working. But there's nothing that says we can't, again, continue to advocate. So if we want to draft a letter and send it in, I see no problem with that at all.
Work with the Melrose Commission.
Yeah.
And
That would
see
make
if,
sense. Yeah. And Reading, I think, is Reading accessible?
I don't know. I only go.
Reading doesn't have a commission.
I go in. Oh, they don't have a commission. That's right.
Well, that's gonna be tough. They wouldn't. Then it's tough to get them to help. So
Remember the old squeaky wheel?
I know.
Yep.
I hear a few of them in my job. So
Yeah.
yeah.
The MBTA has a lot of squeaky wheels, so it's literally.
That's pretty funny. So that's it. I'm assuming that you have the Reader's Digest. Are you good? Would you prefer to hear more? I mean, it's really riveting presentation. I've seen it about 4 times. So
Are you all good? Are you okay to just join the presentations that are posted to the public? I forget, there's like at least 2 more, one in November.
yeah, and they've been hearing pretty clear to minimize the footprint of this thing. So that's been from what I'm hearing from Erin, that's the focus right now, is to look at minimizing.
Right, that came out of the last town council meeting, I believe, so.
Yep, exactly.
Does anybody have anything else? Well, if not, our next meeting is November 6th, which is just, a week from tonight,
Week
as a matter of fact.
Oh, Marie, did you forward over the enforcement thing that I'm working on too for Tarrant Lane? Did that go out to the?
Yes,
commission?
I sent that right before this meeting, so not everybody may have had an opportunity to read it, but they should have it in their inbox.
Yeah, so we had a couple of issues, a couple of accessibility issues there. They ended up building a concrete sidewalk in the right of way that wasn't wide enough, and the ramps weren't compliant. A bunch of issues there, so we're having them rip that out. And then there's also, as I was out there inspecting that, I noticed that the main access also isn't compliant. So that'll be something that is handled through the building department, so they take care of that.
When you say main access, what do you mean? Like the entrance into the building, into the development?
Into this development, yeah. So the building itself is good once you get to the top of that hill that is, at a 12% grade, 10% grade. So they don't have it. That just goes straight down and follows the driveway, which you can't do. So so that's in the queue for them. Mullen's been involved with me, our town council, on handling my complaint. And I believe he's going to be tagging in with Benny pretty soon. Benny DeCristoforo is our building commissioner, and he's up to speed on this, and we'll be looking to handle it on his side. So.
And how did that come about? I mean, how in the world did they do that major construction without A, knowing enough what should be done, but B, not coming to the town?
Well, your design engineer should be catching most of this stuff. As a former design engineer, I knew what I had to do, but sometimes things get missed. I don't understand, why you would go to the 4-foot sidewalk, and certain pieces of it didn't make sense to me, but hey, it is what it is. And, we'll correct it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
mean,
they've done a bunch of things that they did not ask. And
yeah, there was some stuff. Yeah,
they built the retaining wall and all the other things that they were not supposed to do, and then they just figured, well, we'll not ask, we'll just do it and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know if that's how they look at it, but I think it's just maybe some judgment calls that they're making probably aren't really the best of calls, but we work with folks on this type of stuff. But this was like my first project when I got here. So, I mean, in theory, I would have caught this, but, obviously there's a lot going in and transitioning in. So I probably could have done a better job of catching it, but, ultimately I wasn't sort of in this role, but still, I always look at that stuff when I'm reviewing plans, but, unfortunately.
Yeah, they
this
should,
one-
the ADA is
this
not
one-
new,
Oh, so,
the
yeah,
ADA is not a new thing. It's old enough to rent a car.
but
And,
you'd be surprised how many folks miss stuff on it. I mean, we comment on it constantly. There's always something. So, we're usually on top of it. But like I said, this was my first thing. The ZBA at the time weren't really receptive for my comments. So, we have a much different relationship these days. So, can't be the new guy on the block requiring, certain changes to their decisions and stuff. That didn't go over well for the first project out of the gate. So, but now we have a few projects under our belt, so they like us.
Okay, is there anything else? All right, if not, it's 8:23. Does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Lois. Second. Thanks, Lorna, Paul. Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you especially for attending 2 meetings this month. I really appreciate it. We just have a lot to get through. And we have another presentation on November 6th.
Yep, open space
Yep.
transition. Yep.
So,
the presentations have been great. Thanks for setting them up, everybody that did that work.
that's
Well, it's
mainly
good to-
Bill.
Opinions of the Commission on Disability, the Historical Commission, all these different groups. You didn't hear that years ago. So it's not more transparent now than it ever was. I just feel sorry for the Hall property with the selection number 2, which I thought was agreed upon by the Historical Commission, the Commission on Disabilities, and then they go and Town Council goes to position number 3, I guess, or 1.
Well, there was one, yeah. So there was some discussion at the town council on that one. So it is what it. From my perspective, I can build all of them. So whatever folks want,
But it's good to ask that question. What did the Commission on Disabilities think about that? Or what did the Historical? And you didn't hear that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I talked a lot about it, though. I mean, definitely from from your folks' stuff. I mean, there was some questions about it that did come up. Because they asked me, can you still, from an accessibility standpoint, is it still good? I was like, yeah, we'll relocate where some of the spaces are and we can make things work. So it's near the bathroom area. So, that was brought up to me. So we talked about that a little bit. And then I would say we also talked about the Historic Commission, because there was some comments on that I kind of carried through and talked about that as well. So, I mean, if there's something that you folks see that you want a little different, let me know. But I think we hit the spaces. We had the extra space that's not there now, and we are improving accessibility. I mean, there was definitely part of my presentation. So,
Which, by the way, that will be handicap accessible, restroom area.
oh yeah.
Okay, well, with that, we will convene and we'll see you on next Monday.
Sounds good.